So,
and I did like to see that actually Sam Shanklin was sitting there. He doesn't have to play the first round today, Sam. He's going to get those 3 points. Walkover win against Rajabov, but he was sitting there. So 15 players getting ready for the final day of preliminaries. 7 of them will join Rajabov in leaving the tournament, and 8 will get ready for the quarterfinals. Levon Aronian is currently in the danger zone together with Wei Yi. So do you fully expect, David, both players to go for a win in this game?
I would think so, although it depends how much of an eye Levon Aronian has on the standings. He could just look at this game and think, okay, Wei Yi is chasing me. Let's just play it safe. Let's make sure he doesn't win. He doesn't leapfrog me. And then the last 2 games, his fate is still in his own hands. But yeah, it's a really tricky strategy. Levon is not the type of player to play for a draw in general. And he has not gone for a drawish variation. He's gone to something he's played a few times already in this tournament, a type of anti-Sicilian where he's just closing the position, not allowing any early pawn breaks, not really allowing any early exchanges. And what do you guys think of this opening choice? He's played it a few times with mixed success, Levon Aronian. He lost to Erigaisi with this opening.
Yeah, I mean, when you play this type of opening with the white pieces, you're not really saying to your opponent, I'm going to try to get a big advantage, win quickly. What you are saying is, OK, I just want to take the game into my kind of battlefield. I know the position might be equal. I know the computer probably doesn't even agree with the way I'm playing, but I don't care. I want to get a position that I like, a structure I like, and the structure is basically your pawns, the skeleton of your position, and he can decide where they go. But it must be OK for Black as well. I mean, Black is totally fine. There's no danger at this moment in time.
Yeah, I've noticed when studying these types of opening positions myself, computers often even slightly prefer Black. That's what kind of drives white players away from choosing openings like this. Nowadays, you turn on the computer, so you see, oh, it might say plus 0.5 for Black, and it's only move 8. Let's not even investigate further. But of course, Levon, as you said, he understands the skeleton of the position. He understands the plans, where the pieces will go. He understands what he wants to do quite deep into the middle game. And Wei Yi could have predicted this opening because Levon has been playing it several times already this tournament, but he is the first one to think. Wei Yi may be surprised, maybe just he analysed with the computer up to this point. He saw, Black's doing well. He didn't look any further, but Black does need a plan. Which side of the board is Black going to play on? Maybe in the centre, maybe on the queen side. He needs to start pushing some pawns Black at some point. But how to do that?
Yeah.
Jovanka, has this position been played before?
It has been played before many times, actually. I say many, but that's probably about 30 times, which isn't that much. I'm a big fan of this particular system that Levon is playing, primarily because it fits in with the type of chess that I was playing when I was younger. It was always, just develop the pieces, threaten to set up a big pawn centre in the middle of the board, and then sit on the space and enjoy the freedom that your pieces give you. And I like this type of chess. Yes, as Simon and David have mentioned, that the computer's not a big fan, but in reality, they're humans playing, and there's always the opportunity to go wrong.
Yeah, it's what we call a system, right? It's not necessarily an opening where you have to memorise lots of forcing variations. It's a system where you know where you'll put your pawns, you know where you'll put your pieces, you know what your plan is next. We talk about the London system. It's quite generic. There's an outline. You know in advance what you're going to do. And that's what he's going for here. The knight manoeuvre is quite typical.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the best ways to learn, David, for a lot of players. I mean, even if you're much low-rated, doing systems, I think, is such a better way to learn about chess. I mean, a lot of people, memorising lines using chessable, the great chessable, to do that is a good thing to do, but you've got to know the ideas behind the moves you're memorising. It's like a parrot, a parrot, memorises words, but it probably doesn't know the meaning of the words. So you've got to know the meaning of the moves you're playing. And with these kind of positions, I mean, this is exactly what Aronian's doing. You saw that knight move. He knows that knight's going to the king side. He's going to move his pawns forwards. And this, I think, gets you to understand chess a bit better, right, when you're playing systems. So highly recommended way to play. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why the London system is so popular, because you just have to work out your plans.
Yeah. As Simon says, the knight is coming forward at some point and then the pawn stepping forward, and he's done this at least 3 times, I think, already this tournament.
Do we know where the name comes from? London system? Obviously, it must be from London.
Yeah, this is not the London system here. The London system is a very popular system, probably the most popular, and that came about from the 1922 tournament in London, and I hope I'm not making this up. I know no one believes me now. You know, you don't believe me, and it was in that book, London Chess and Fishing, which everyone knows. I think it was actually a famous chess tournament in London in 1922, but I could be making it up.
100 years ago.
100 years ago, yeah.
So Simon, explain, if we just go back temporarily, the London system would start with this pawn pushing forward, white's knight coming out, and no matter what black does, the white bishop coming out, and maybe we can explain why this is a system.
Yeah, it's a system because I guess you can just break it down into mini plans. So all your pieces as white, if you just look at it from a white point of view, you know where every single piece is going to go, and you know why they're going there, and you know where your king's going to go, you know why. You have to adapt a little bit to what your opponent plays, but you don't really need to memorize individual moves. You just know, I put my piece here because it's doing this job, and then you get into the middle game in a nice sort of easy way. I guess that's why it's so popular, right? I mean, for players don't have time to memorize, beginners, lots of different moves. So
exactly, and he's basically doing the same as the London system, but just on the opposite flank. So if you look at white's setup here, he's just in a mirror image. So here he's brought his knight out and also brought his bishop out. So it's very similar. He knows that on the next few moves his bishop's going to drop back. He knows he's going to push his pawns to these two squares, no matter what black does. He knows he's going to, for example, later on white castled, and he knows he's going to bring his knight back to this square and reroute it as he's just done in the game. And as we see, black has kicked back white's bishop, but white's bishop wanted to go here anyway. That's part of the system, part of the plan. The bishop on this square actually supports your central pawn for later. It also, indirectly later, potentially will attack along this diagonal towards the black king. First as well, you push this pawn forward, and this opening looks identical now to actually a Spanish opening, which we get from a completely different first move for black. But using the pattern recognition there, using the information he has about where to put his pieces, bringing his bishop out now, at some point pushing a pawn forward in the centre, it's just automatic, and that's why Aronian still has nearly 16 minutes on his clock.
So he moved that bishop 3 times, but that was just because he wanted it to go to that exact square.
Yeah, it's partly necessity because the bishop always gets kicked around, but he developed it, and it's actually on a good diagonal. The two bishops, often bishops together like this, they have potential, and look at this, the position's about to open up, and if it does open up, then this bishop will be well placed. If the centre disappears, it will be on a great diagonal. Yeah. So again, it's just all about the systems, memorising 2 or 3 different patterns, and then choosing the order with which you play them. And as Simon says, great for when you're starting out chess because it cuts out all the nonsense of kind of knuckling down and memorising sharp, long variations, which actually doesn't improve the understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was also going to assure you, Simon, that you can breathe a sigh of relief. I did quickly check up how the London system got its name, and it was from a tournament in 1922.
Nice memory.
So, wow. Good call there.
Haven't ruined my brain quite yet.
I genuinely thought you were trolling us with that information.
I wasn't sure either. I was kind of like, 1922, London. Yeah, so, no.
Yeah.
Pick a random year. Something ending in 22. Yeah. That's impressive knowledge.
Certainly is impressive. And meanwhile, a set of pawns have left the board. And,
did you say balls?
Yeah, no, boards. I said boards. I got it.
That'd be an interesting game. They get some balls out.
That would be quite interesting.
Yeah, bowling chess.
Okay. So the pawns have left the board, and now there's a new added element to the position. I mean, who is going to utilise that now opened line on the C file, and is white threatening to step the pawn forward, the D pawn 1 square forward, grab some space, and all sorts of questions that Wei Yi now has to contemplate.
Also, white has actually sacrificed a pawn, we should mention. For example, if black captures in the centre right now with a knight or with his pawn, then white will temporarily at least be a pawn down. You cannot, okay, he has captured with a pawn, but you cannot go and grab this pawn back yet, because then the black queen would swoop down and win the white bishop. White's bishop needs to be protected by its queen. For example, queen takes pawn, queen takes bishop would immediately lose for white. And just like in the game, it's very similar. After pawn takes pawn, white cannot now go and capture it with his knight. Same problem after a trade. The black queen comes and wins a bishop. So How do we think Levon Aronian is going to win back the pawn he sacrificed? The pawn is very weak. It shouldn't last for too long. It's also doubled right now, so it's not a massive concern. But is there something immediate? The computer really likes white's position suddenly.
I was going to suggest forget about the pawn for the time being and just develop the pieces.
Yep.
And dark bishop has come out.
This looks good. Lining up against the queen.
Maybe threatening to explode the position even more. I mean, another move that I was also thinking, you know, those rhymes just keep coming to mind, and I'm just thinking a knight on f5 will thrive. Maybe put a piece there.
Later, a knight might land here. Maybe if the black bishop goes away, if black loses control over that square, a knight would love to jump in. Also, the black queen has put herself willingly where he put his queen on this square to line up that trick against the white bishop, but the queen might regret sitting on the square now because the white rook is just going to swing across and all the pawns have disappeared on this open file. The black queen will need to move again very shortly. So yeah, it looks pretty nice for white. The black bishop, meanwhile, coming out. And is it time to bring the rook across? Is it time, as Ivanka mentions, to maybe jump in with one of the two white knights? They could both jump towards the black king right now. You could maybe push this pawn forward in the centre to open up the diagonal. We mentioned this bishop has got potential. So much choice for Levon Aronian.
Yeah, I mean, I guess black's, you know, quite comfortable as well, though. I mean...
pretty solid for now.
I think this last move was maybe important the way you played because white was getting ready for ideal sort of situation with the white rook, which you can play now, but I don't know if it works. OK, the knight's jumped in, and this is trying to get the bishop pair. But yeah, I don't like that knight being there. I really want to take that, but then you open up the other rook. So looking a little bit more comfortable for white, I guess, at the moment.
Trade here, as you mentioned, opens up this rook. I'm not a huge fan, I must say, of that knight jump at all for white. I've seen it go wrong too many times where this pawn actually just gets in the way of your attack. You want this pawn gone in order to free up your bishop, but Levon knows his stuff. I'm going to trust him now, and yeah, this knight jump at least is going to yield white the bishop pair. A lot of pressure now on black's position with this knight.
Levon playing very fast, though. He's been doing that the whole tournament, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit too fast.
It was a recipe for success last season on the tour quite often. Levon had some good results playing fast, especially when he was playing Magnus Carlsen. He managed to win a really important match, and that was because he was faster than Magnus. He was more confident than Magnus, but yeah, this tournament, it hasn't served him too well. I guess if you're playing fast, relying on instinct, it depends on form. If your instincts are sharp, if you're super fresh, then playing fast makes a lot of sense. But if you're not calculating as quickly as normal, if you're slightly out of form, then playing fast, yeah, you might make an odd blunder here or there. And we've seen that from Levon Aronian this tournament.
Yeah. This thing about instinct, Magnus has talked a lot about it, like, my instinct is not working, or my instinct is very sharp. Can you train your instinct? Can you make sure that this is, you know, for a world championship match or a big tournament, I need my instinct to be on point? Can you sort of time it? Like, you know, an athlete in the Olympics will, you know, time their top form for the Olympics. Yeah, is it possible as a chess player?
Tough question.
That is an interesting question, because somehow I'm just going to have to answer the question personally. I mean, I've always treated this kind of issue of form and instinct as being something almost of a divine nature, you know, somehow it's part of luck or something. The way that I train, I mean, especially now that I'm playing in the Olympiad, is I will be training on calculation and solving as many positions and problems as I can in order to develop that instinct. So if I see a similar pattern, there is some part of my mind working on a subconscious level, operating and just making sure that my hand is ready to play the correct move.
Yeah. What do you think, David?
Yeah.
Can you time it?
I think you can, in a way. For example, if I know that the big goal, if, for example, you mentioned those athletes timing it for the Olympics, if the big goal is a certain time format or a certain race or a certain game, if, for example, I'm aiming for this tournament where it's 15 minutes, it's online, I would just be playing as much as I can. Maybe some of my practice would be over the board chess, but the big target, the kind of the bulk of my work would be practicing this time limit against similar strength opponents. And usually that tends to help. I mean, Levon Aronian, for example, he's been playing quite a lot recently, but very little online and very little rapid chess. He's been playing different time formats. And I think it's just taking him time to get back in the zone where his instincts are on point for the 15-minute time control.
Yeah.
Maybe his instincts would be great in blitz time controls or longer time controls, but at the moment, his instincts are just maybe slightly rustier at this time format. And it's the same for athletes. They might be running loads, they might be just to practice, but then for the 800 meters, they haven't done that exact amount for a while. So, yeah, there are ways, like Ivanka says, doing puzzles, playing blitz chess, making sure the speed is there, the sharpness is there, but it's different for everyone. And I think Levon maybe hasn't been prioritizing the online format so much lately. Now he's back in the zone. And maybe by day 5 of this tournament, if he's qualified for the knockouts, maybe he'll be fully fresh again, his instincts firing on all cylinders.
Very interesting. Now, we do have a few moves. How are these instincts working in this game?
Yeah, interesting developments in the game. We did see that white knight on f5. It was just too strong. The knight on f5 should not be allowed to survive, and it was exchanged off. And now, yeah, after this kind of funny pawn move by Wei Yi on the left side of the board, white now has these doubled pawns, but white has some holes in the position, and Levon Aronian, the move I'm really surprised by is this last one, offering up the bishop pair. He's allowing an exchange now. I thought the bishop pair was maybe white's kind of pride and joy in this position. What do you guys think?
It's a bit of an odd move, but when I was looking at the position, I couldn't find a great home for the dark square bishop. And perhaps Levon just also couldn't see a solution there and decides to trade it off. But I mean, the first move you've got to calculate is what happens if black simply chops off those bishops.
Yeah.
And knight takes the bishop. And I'm assuming that a kickback will happen because you can't let the white knight sit there on g5 square, menacing some of your squares around the black king. That is a dangerous idea, and that David's highlighting. But OK, so if the knight is kicked back, is Levon's idea just to go all in?
Yeah, the question is how.
I was thinking...
The black knight at least is ready to drop back if it needs to protect its king. Black's king, it's hard to kind of loosen it up. It's hard to open up any lines towards it. Maybe the white knight will just step back. I mean, it looks a bit sad, but maybe it will step back, trying to conquer this pawn at some point. Maybe the idea is just to use this bishop at some point and line it up against the black knights, or maybe on this diagonal later. It doesn't look too convincing at all to me. I don't see any tricks here for white.
Yeah. It's kind of a complicated position as well, because you see it's pretty open and you kind of have to take it on a move-by-move basis. But at the final position you've got, it seems like black is doing OK.
Yeah, black can take this pawn, maybe even go back up, pawn up. Black's knight has this great square, potentially an outpost it can start annoying the white pieces from. I mean, I'm not saying white's worse, but it's a bit strange what's been happening. And if I were Wei Yi, I would just love to trade this bishop off immediately, just release any pressure. OK, he ignores that tension and he takes this pawn first of all, but this feels a bit loose. I don't see any immediate tactics, but this rook is undefended.
Ooh, bar reacts.
Just feels loose. This rook is undefended. This knight is a bit loose. This knight is undefended. What can white try now?
Yeah, maybe something like just bishop b3 is pretty sensible to tie that rook off, and black's knight in the centre is very strong. We mentioned white's bishop is not doing a great job, so possibly moving there is getting a better option.
I mean, this looks very good. The computer, however, says that white has 3 good moves. One gives quite a significant advantage, and that is just the simple bishop takes bishop. OK, that's slightly surprising.
Yeah, but the second move is really surprising, right? I mean,
wow.
That's the kind of move that he won't play that move. Let's have a bet.
Simon,
we haven't had a bet today.
We haven't had a bet. Rook takes bishop. Would that be on your radar?
No, and I bet he doesn't play it. Anyone want to take me on?
Why is it a strange move? I can obviously see the queen is on that line.
Giving up a rook for a bishop, either of the knights can take you now, so you actually lose material. And yeah, he doesn't play it, he plays your move, Simon.
Yeah.
This, I mean, maybe there's a follow-up, maybe you can push your pawn forward and go on an attack against the black king, but I think that was just too difficult for any human. It's a big material investment, a rook for a bishop as well. So we can't blame Levon Aronian for missing that one and not sacrificing. Instead, he plays a more human type of move. And yeah, maybe keeping this one in his pocket for later. the third move that the computer suggested here, actually. I thought maybe you would have liked Simon just pushing Harry the h-pawn up one square to support this bishop. But nope, the white bishop attacked the knight. And now we finally do see this exchange of dark squared bishops. And some pressure now against the black position. This knight was undefended, it's hit, it has to retreat. And even more pressure being added. The momentum is picking up in white's favour, actually, threat after threat. Yeah. This is a pin.
Yeah.
How does he break the pin? He has to move the black queen, surely.
And Wei under 5 minutes on the clock.
But there's some uncomfortable pressure on the f7 pawn as well.
Yeah.
It really reminds me of the time when I was playing a game like, and it was almost very similar to this. I had the bishop and the knight lined up on the f7 pawn when a grandmaster walks past me and says to me, "You got a lot of pressure on that pawn," and I was like, "Thank you."
During a game.
Yeah, during a game, I was so annoyed because if someone had heard this, I mean, it was the most obvious thing in the world. Yeah. If someone had heard this, they would have they could have said you cheated.
Yeah, definitely.
But
yeah.
I mean,
I'm just thinking the weirdest thing that someone, let's say a grandmaster, has done during a game. I think I can probably beat it, and you could probably try to guess the grandmaster if you want to. But this is actually a bit weird. A grandmaster licked my ear once.
What?
During a game. Yeah, I'm not joking. In the 4NCL. So
why?
Because he's really weird. And, I mean, nowadays he could get arrested for that, right? I mean, for licking. Yeah, and it was like, what are you doing? Yeah, literally, like, yeah, it was weird.
So he just walked around like the board?
He walked around and it's like, what? And it's just like, yeah. And he's sort of, yeah, it's very strange, yeah.
Inspired by Mike Tyson, maybe? It didn't bite, luckily.
Yeah, I think maybe I preferred it if he bit in my ear. I don't know. Licking the ear was weird, but I don't know.
I think I can guess who that might be.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'll ask you later, Simon.
You'll ask later, OK. Yeah. Can you beat that, David?
I can't beat that, so nobody's ever licked.
No one's,
no.
Very strange.
Yeah, OK.
How did you react?
It was just very weird, right? I mean, I was just like, well, literally, what are you doing? And it was like, yeah,
it wasn't even your opponent, right? It was just
no. I mean, that would be that'd be even weirder, maybe.
What did your opponent do then?
I think he was just thinking. I mean, like this guy was just walking around, and he was like, he just sort of, you get this like weird feeling, and it's like, and it's literally in the middle of a tournament. There's like 200 people in the hall, and it's like, what'd you do? What'd you do when that happens? Do you punch him, or do you shout at him, or do you just get on with the game? It's very confusing.
Were you able to concentrate again afterwards? Or?
Well, I mean, yeah, it took me a while, right, to get back into it, because you're like just confused, yeah, more than anything. So yeah, that was weird.
I hope that never happens to any viewers at home.
No.
Ever throughout their chess careers.
Would you wouldn't like that, would you? Like,
No, I think I would go for your. Yeah.
I think
it would be terrible.
I think nowadays you probably should just call the arbiter, right, and just say this guy. I mean, it's quite a weird thing to say. Excuse me, arbiter. That guy's just licked my ear. It's like,
I think I would call the police.
Yeah. Like,
could it be a new form of chess, though? Everything is allowed to put your opponent off.
No.
That could be fun.
That's a bad idea. It's like a bad idea. And OK, well, Wei was feeling that the pressure was a little bit uncomfortable on the f7 pawn, and he pushes his d pawn forward. And whilst Levon Aronian is thinking, well, it's the final day of preliminaries, half the field are going to leave the competition, so it's going to be a dramatic day. And as always, we love it when you at home are part of the fun, sending us your selfies, sending us your comments, and of course, showing us where you're watching from, how you're watching with. And you can do that by tweeting us using the hashtag #ChessChamps. And to kick us all off, I'd like to share with you a little chess-themed photo from Abhishek, who's asking us, how do we like his chest tattoo of the mighty king? That's so cool.
We love it.
We were talking about tattoos the other day. We were talking about what kind of chest tattoos one should get.
Yeah. Well, David?
I'm on the lookout for good designs, so if any viewers do have any ideas, maybe this one from Abhishek. But yeah, I'm looking out for some ink ideas, let's say.
It's very cool, David. A chest. Does it have to be a chest tattoo, or are you open to anything?
I'm open-minded, but chess would be a bonus. Just gonna be a
Great.
bonus.
Yeah.
You get a grandmaster looking sort there. Tattooed.
Definitely won't get an image of that
No.
on my arms.
No.
Maybe it could be like your score sheet from the game when you officially became Grandmaster.
Oh, yeah, that game was rather boring though.
And it's probably really long. It's probably like all the way down his leg, around the back.
It was only 200 moves long.
Yeah, it's just sort of.
You know, I was listening to a podcast this morning about Proust. Apparently, you probably know him, philosopher. You know, he wrote these really long books, and the whole podcast was saying that you should read Proust because it slows you down. I was thinking suddenly that we should all play through David's games because it would slow us down.
Yeah.
You know, we're now in the business of everything being fast. 5 minutes, ba-boom, on to the next, and instead.
Maybe it will just make you want to be faster because it's like, oh, do we have to keep going?
One of the things
Why
I
would
get
we want to slow down?
with my YouTube channel quite a lot, people say I watch it to go to sleep. I'm not really sure how to take that. So, do I have that soothing voice? No, I don't think so. But yeah, maybe, you know, to sort of, you know, just to get in the right zone. You could sort of.
It was ASMR, right?
That would be really good,
Yeah.
I have sent several arbiters to sleep during my games.
Really?
Several. And I've sent a couple of opponents to sleep during games.
That would be a great idea of a podcast. David's long grinds. It started with E4.
Move 136, G3.
There you go. This is great. I'm not even signed up to this. You know, you'll have a fan of people listening to your voice just before they go to bed. Yeah, does that
Maybe
excite
that's
you?
the way to popularise chess. Yeah.
And this is what's the name? SM.
ASMR, I think.
It's
Yeah,
very
that's
popular,
right.
right?
Yeah, it is,
It's huge on YouTube and podcasts and stuff
I've
like
seen
that.
lots of chess videos kind of been saying accidentally ASMR.
Yeah.
There's a channel, isn't there? ASMR chess. There's a chess one, which is very popular.
Really?
I know the guy who runs it, but he's secret.
Oh.
Secret guy, so he's not supposed to mention his name. So yeah, popular
Going to
channel.
be Googling that one later.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, after a pretty long think, for Aronian standards at least, he dropped back the white knight, putting some pressure on black's pawns in the centre, and the black queen moved. So let's just recap. White is actually temporarily a pawn down right now. We haven't been talking about that too much because the two centre pawns for black, those double D pawns, they're both going to be very weak. One of them might drop off, and meanwhile, Aronian's going for it. He's pushed his pawn forward. He's trying to launch a pawn storm towards the black king, but weakening the white king as well in the process, and the computer really hates that last move, maybe because the white king is actually the weaker of the two right now. And black's knight jumps in. Oof, it looks like it's turning in black's favour suddenly.
Totally does. I have to say, I visibly recoiled when I saw that pawn move come on the board. It was so surprising. I did not expect it at all. And, you know, take a look at Levon Aronian's pieces. They are not primed for a kingside attack. They are primed for action in the middle. That's where he should be focusing his efforts on. And White's king looking rather shaky at the minute. I don't like what's happened.
Yeah, it looks really inconsistent what he's just done, his last two moves. Maybe if we go to recap, because we were discussing, OK, these two doubled pawns, they're targets. Maybe there's some way to slowly build up some pressure against them. Maybe move the white queen, coordinate the white rooks. But throwing this pawn forward, I understand the idea. He wants to kick away this knight, and it looks like this knight is defending this central pawn. But after the black knight wanted to jump into the centre anyway, maybe Aronian just underestimated the fact that bishop takes pawn is not possible. It looks like white's regained the pawn, forking the two knights, a double attack there. But this knight jump is just terminal. This knight jump hits the queen and hits the bishop and wins material. So Levon Aronian instead had to retreat his knight. But this is where the inconsistency is, pushing a pawn, opening up your king, and then retreating instead of going on the attack. Going forward, stepping back. And now also, once the knight disappears, maybe black has better. Maybe black's knight should actually jump into this square. That looks very tempting. But even if the knights disappear, for example, the white king is always going to be open later in the game. So, yeah, it just feels like a step in the wrong direction. That being said, what is Wei Yi going to play? He does keep the knights on the board. He plays this knight in, and white's queen moves. I would love to somehow improve this black knight now. You can't quite jump into the centre yet. The square is covered by the white rook, but if you could somehow jump into this square, this is kind of the dream square for the black knight. Maybe you can go the other way. Maybe you can jump this way, putting some pressure on the white bishop, and then jumping into this square. which is nicely supported by these two pawns. It just all looks wrong for white somehow.
Yeah, it does. And does black have to worry about the pawn that's up for grabs in the middle of the board?
Yeah, maybe this bishop can take a pawn. There's some pressure here on the third rank, but maybe no way for black to capitalize on that at the moment. So instead of that knight jump, if we go back, the bishop attacking this pawn, Wei Yi decides to jump into this square. Also quite convincing. Attacking this lone ranger right now, the white A pawn, but also defending black's pawn in the center. Those two black knights, they're starting to take over. They're starting to really control everything right now. This white rook is not such a happy piece.
No, and I really like this knight move as well because it clears the third row for the queen. So look at the queen, you know, she's on that Goldilocks line, you know, she can switch to the left, switch to the right. And yeah, doing great defensive and offensive work.
Yeah, if Wei Yi beats Levon Aronian now, Aronian's chances, they're going to take a massive hit.
Yeah.
It's his direct rival. He's going to be overtaken. Wei Yi's guaranteed another 3 points from that Rajabov clash.
That's true.
I mean,
It's a very tricky position to play as well, isn't it? I mean, for white, because
you can't play it safe anymore, right?
you can't, and you know, black can just take pawns, capture pawns. I mean, I was trying to create some counterplay. I think in situations like this where things are going pretty wrong, you've got to. Okay, a couple of moves have been played, but you've got to try to create some counterplay. So I really wanted to open up black's king, but as you say, black's queen doing a great job of defending all that.
And I just want to mention a massive result. Ju Wenjun has already, after 30 minutes, won her game against Hans Niemann. The tilt continues for Niemann, but 3 points for Ju Wenjun. That takes her back in contention for qualification. She could be the first female player to make it to the knockout stage in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. That would be amazing. I think everyone can agree on that. 3 points for her takes her to 15 points, currently in 9th place, and she will face off against Anish Giri in the next round. Exciting stuff.
That's very exciting because yesterday everything went wrong for her. And I have to say, I played through her games and a lot of it wasn't her fault. She lost on time in a completely drawn position, level position, I should say, against Duda.
Yeah.
Maybe that could have been internet troubles because sometimes you have lag.
Yeah, she was disconnected.
Yeah, and then she disconnected later on as well. And so she lost 2 games, right?
Against Mamajarov, yeah.
Against Mamajarov, it was totally level. And, one of those days, you really feel frustrated. You're just like, come on. This is, this has been her tournament. She's been shining throughout. And now this happens on a critical day. So it's fantastic to see her do well against Niemann. And when it comes to Niemann, sorry, Simon, I was reminded of, I was watching Doctor Strange for all of 10 minutes after the show. And there's a scene, right, where he tries to do some magic or whatever he does. And the lady goes to him, drop the ego and the power will rise or something. And I was like, oh, maybe this is like the thing with chess players need to do, just drop the ego. When you lose, drop the ego, drop those negative stories you tell yourself and just let it all flow.
Yeah.
There you go. Me taking inspiration from Marvel.
And I know it's a little bit sadistic, I may be a little bit cruel, but if Hans does lose all his 3 games, Kaya, can you interview him, please? Straight away. The crowd wants it.
I can imagine he will be a little bit angry. He said yesterday, I don't understand why you want to interview me now. But of course we did. It's important to talk to the ones who are struggling as well. And in this one, is Levon still struggling?
It's unclear. Suddenly, he's actually 2 pawns down, Levon Aronian. Black has 3 pawns now on the left half of the board. Those D pawns as well, still surviving, but a bit weak. It's just about whether Levon can, firstly, trap that black knight. That black knight has no retreat squares anymore. It got greedy, grabbed a pawn, but it has nowhere safe to run. But also, can Levon, while that black knight tries to extricate itself, tries to find an escape route, can Levon just pick up all of black's pawns? The pawns on the D file, that black B pawn maybe as well. Lots of questions suddenly for Wei Yi to answer, and only 1 minute on the clock to find those solutions. It's not easy anymore. I do feel Wei Yi complicated the matter a bit too much. He could have done something very similar, but in a more risk-free way. Suddenly, Levon's found this tricky queen retreat, which I don't think was on Wei Yi's radar. And
His knight's really
Yeah.
out of the
How's he
game
even
as well,
saving
isn't
it, I'm thinking.
I mean, it's a good question.
You have to use the black queen, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, knights on the rim, just typical problem here that Black's got. And it was actually what Ju Wenjun did wrong as well. I think in the game we covered yesterday, Ju Wenjun moved the knight out of the, to the side of the board, and that made her lose the game against Dominguez.
It's the knight stable, Simon. The knight is completely trapped by the queen. Look at the queen. It controls this kind of portion of the board, and that's all of the squares that the black knight wants to use. So, OK, the black queen has had to try and challenge its rival over here. A queen trade, I think, would get Levon out of any danger. He could trade off the queens, then trade off the knight, and then start grabbing some pawns back. He could start grabbing this pawn, and this should fizzle out towards a draw. All the pawns are disappearing. It's just rooks on the board. Ooh, I was going to say maybe if he was feeling more ambitious, he could keep the queens on, but he has taken them off. And after trading the queens, instead of taking the knight, actually, he's just created this pin. So he is still playing ambitiously, Levon Aronian, trying to pin the knight to the rook behind it. And the problem for black is you can't currently defend your knight with your other rook, because after a couple of trades here, after everything disappears from the board, there is a nasty checkmate. And black's king has no breathing space. But I think the trick is, after he's defended his knight, if everything does disappear, then at the very end, he does have this pawn push to at least keep this white rook honest for now. White's rook now cannot kind of maintain this checkmating idea, so when it moves, then black will capture the white bishop. And black still has a lot of pawns. Black still has these three. And yeah, maybe Levon Aronian had missed this last move, missed this pawn push. It's a very important pawn push.
Yeah, it's important to have a keen tactical, well, it's a keen sense of tactics, because I'd missed that as well. I thought it wasn't possible to play that move. Just,
maybe in the current position, I was going to say it's the same idea. Bishop takes pawn, looks like it's a double attack hitting this rook, still with an eye on the knight, but the black pawn again pushes forward. As you mentioned, Jovanka, just keenly spotting Wei Yi that he can use tactics to survive here.
Is it going to get simplified now after the rook just slides one square to the left? You have to keep an eye on the pawn, I think, and luckily white's always got the option of swapping the knight, swapping some things off.
Yeah.
So is this
it's going to happen.
Getting liquidated now, maybe?
I guess the black rook will move, maybe, from the attack, or this move.
Yeah, this move is possible.
I was reluctant to do any calculation here, but the calculation is actually quite simple. After a rook trade, white takes this pawn. Now, this game is heading towards a draw. Most likely, both sides have 4 pawns. White's 4 pawns are not actually so impressive because these are doubled. So white's 4 is basically the same as black's 3. Black does have this one kind of trump card, the b pawn, but it's not too impressive after a check. And yeah, you can trade off this bishop, you can leave it on. Either way, it should be a draw. Personally, I would just take it off and avoid any risk. But okay, he trades the rooks. That's actually very clever. And a rook endgame, white has to start racing the king over to stop this pawn before it's too late. But I think white should be in time. It should still be a draw.
Even with the clock situation, could Levon look at Wei Yi's time and see that he only has about a minute to go? Is there anything he can sort of impose some problems?
I don't think so. There have just been too many exchanges, too many pieces have left the board. And especially the way Wei Yi calculates. I keep saying the way. But yeah, the Chinese school of chess as well, they're so good at calculating 2 or 3 move tricks, 2 or 3 move sequences. They can calculate it in milliseconds. So in this type of position, there will never be long tactics. It's because there's so few pieces on the board. It's just about confirming this 2-3 move sequence is fine for me. I can play it. And with 1 minute on the clock, that should be enough now.
Now, flagging has been a theme lately in chess. Is it Kramnik who's been very critical of players who flag, which basically means you're not winning on the board, but you win on the clock?
Play for the clock.
Yeah. We don't see that maybe in rapid chess as much.
No.
But in tie breaks, we could see it,
In
maybe.
tie breaks, potentially.
Yeah, especially in Armageddon, I guess that is the nature of the game. I mean, he had a great choice of words. He called flagging moral degradation, especially because, you know, he was being flagged in like lost position. Well, he was winning and his opponent was losing, or in completely drawn positions. And, you know, it all happened at once. And it was his first time playing a tournament like this. And he's like, never, ever again.
Yeah. But
It sounds like a bad loser, really. I mean, you're playing chess. You know, the clock is part of the game, right? I have to admit, I do moan a lot whenever I get flags. I'm the same. I'm like, how dare you do that? But, you know, it is just like, it's part of the game, right? If you move too slow, you lose. You know, you've got to move quicker. So, I mean, and it's an exciting part of the game. I'm actually quite against increment in general. I wish there was no increment. I think it would be much more exciting because you'd see many more games ending on time.
Yeah.
You see many more shootouts, as you can say. So I would love to bring that back. I don't know if David would maybe. I don't know. David
would retire from chess immediately.
David lives on the increment. I mean, often, but
There would be no more 200-move games.
that's true, actually.
But you could have the increment kick in. I mean, I kind of like this idea that up to a certain amount of moves, there's no increment. But once you pass, say, like move 45 or for 40 or something, then like a very slight increment kicks in of like 1 second or so. And
I know a lot of the top players in the world, at least, they have your opinion there, Simon. I've spoken to a few of them and they want to get rid of increment. They just say, why does it still exist?
Yeah,
Chess should be an adrenaline sport.
It's quite funny because I posted this on Twitter and you had all the arbiters started coming in and they were like, oh, we did our surveys and people prefer it this way because it's a lot harder for the arbiters. I'm going back to the arbiters again, aren't I? It's a lot harder for the arbiters if there is no extra time added on. They've got an extra job to do. But I think in some tournaments it would just be more exciting to have that aspect. Maybe in the chess, I don't know if the standard might go down a bit, but OK, you sacrifice that for excitement.
Well, we always love it in Armageddon, right? Where we don't have increment. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this game, meanwhile, might be heading towards a draw. The players have repeated the position once. Aronian actually gave up a pawn temporarily just to ruin Black's pawn structure. So Black has the doubled F-pawns now. But the problem for Wei Yi, despite being a pawn up, is that the knight is actually inferior to the bishop while pawns exist on both sides of the board. The knight is not on a good circuit either, so it doesn't have any kind of great squares to go to. If Wei Yi wants to keep this battle alive, the black knight is going to have to go to the edge of the board potentially, but no easy way back from there either. So I think Wei Yi will just give a knight check, as he did a couple of moves ago, repeat the position, and this game should be a draw. I said earlier that Levon Aronian, he lost control, but actually he fought back quite well after that, and OK, no draw yet. He keeps the game alive, Wei Yi. Brave with only 40 seconds on the clock. And OK, Black's knight is at least anchored, and White pushes forward.
But I don't think Wei Yi is really trying hard to win. I think he's just simply prolonging the game and just seeing whether Levon just makes an error somehow, because there's no way for Black to activate the king, and the knight is just dancing around by itself, doing. I can't see what it's doing. And I think, oh, well, OK. Again, the wait and see, the cat and mouse game continues.
Yeah.
The wait and see.
Oh, very
good.
I have to say, any puns I make are just purely accidental.
I would like to see Wei versus So. There could be a lot of puns there. So, Wei, no, I can't. Maybe in the future.
That's so the way to go.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we do have some interesting results. So Jeffrey Chong, he has won his game against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, and that means Shakhriyar is stuck on 18 points. Anish Giri, he played a draw against Arjun Erigaisi. That means he is on 18 points, and with a draw in this game, well, Levon Aronian, he will be on 18 points. So 3 of the big favorites in 6th to 8th place with 18 points, and 3 points behind them will be Ju Wenjun. Wei Yi will have 16 points, and he will definitely gain 3 points in the next game. A walkover win for him against Timur Rajabov, taking him to 19. So I think Levon and Anish and Shakhriyar, they must be feeling the pressure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I guess in Levon's favour, there is the tiebreak where we talk about number of decisive games. He's lost a few, but he's also won a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
So if he ends up on the same score, for example, as Wei Yi, his games have been more maybe fighting, according to the result at least. So that would be one solace for him. But yeah, I mean, none of these players have their fate in their own hands at the moment. They're just hoping that they can win and hoping that's enough. Meanwhile, Wei Yi, he's kind of put his knight not quite in the stable, where it's stuck off the board, because it does have a retreat square, but Black's knight is not on a great circuit at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you swap the white king and bishop around, white might actually be winning.
Yeah.
Which is quite funny. If you've got to notice these patterns. I mean, you were talking about instinct earlier. I think that's a great way to improve your instinct, is to just, open a random chess magazine. Okay, lots of pawns getting swapped off here, so I'm assuming this is now heading towards more of a draw. But I was just going to say, open a chess magazine, look at a position and try to find the move that the player's played is a good way to try and improve your instinct, I think.
Yeah. And I suspect the game will finish very shortly. The white king is planning to round up the b-pawn, and the bishop will sacrifice itself for the last remaining black pawn, and that's it. There you go. It's coming. There is no way that Wei Yi can avoid the draw.
Yeah, and all the pawns are about to disappear, and I think we have a result. There we go. King and bishop versus king is a draw.